Welcome to Safe and Sound, sponsored by White Mountain Fire and Life Safety. I am your host, Kirk Webb, and today on the show we have Doug Wright and Rebecca Montoya Wright, which you guys recently got married. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, Becky, introduce yourself and give me a little bit of your history, background, all that fun stuff.
So as you said, Becky, a lot of people know me as Miss Montoya at Blue Ridge, but I'm now Miss Montoya Wright, and I work at Blue Ridge School District. I'm the counselor and mental health director for the district, and then I also have a small private practice. Been in the community for over 30 years, and that's kind of a nutshell on me.
And Doug, what's kind of your background, history, things? And you know, I know you didn't grow up in the area here.
I grew up in the Valley, so I'm a Valley guy. I grew up in Glendale, West Side, and I went to med school in Iowa, did residency in Detroit, thought I'd seen it all, came to rural Arizona and worked in the ER, and it was an eye-opener. Like, it wasn't just the guns and knives, it was rodeo injuries, and some guy came into the ER one time and he'd been roping, and he's like, I was roping, we got the dallion in there and popped my thumb off. And I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So anyway, I'm on the hospital's governing board, and been on there since 2010. I was chief of staff at that time. And I've also been on the Pine Top Fire Board. So
I was going to say, yeah, you've been very involved in the community and in all different levels and things, and yeah. So it's great having both of you here. I know I've worked with you both for quite a few years, professionally and personally, and it's, you know, I enjoy and I look forward to our conversation, which I wanted to get to just because of some recent events that kind of took place. And I know we've talked about this topic before with you, Becky, in particular about bullying.
Yeah.
And I know bullying is not a good thing, and it's really difficult to teach people about it and how we can stop it. But there's also other aspects, drugs, you know, alcohol, all different things that are, and Doug, having you on here to be able to get your perspective of, so you get to see the front end of things, you get to see the back end of things, and not the good side of things in a lot of cases. So
yeah, so we at the school, we have a lot of rules and policies and procedures regarding bullying, but the state of Arizona has laws, harassment, intimidation, bullying, and hazing laws. And so we are mandated to report certain things, and there's a process to all of that. And there's also definitions that go along with each of those things. And so when we're working with young people, we're really trying to distinguish between, was this a behavior that was rude? Was this a behavior that was mean? Or was this bullying? And we want to intervene regardless. If we have the opportunity to help change behavior when it's rude or mean, then we can prevent perpetual bullying from going on. Those definitions have gotten really cloudy, and sometimes we use the word bullying when what we've had is a rude incident or a mean incident, but it hasn't necessarily met the definition, the legal definition of bullying. So we work hard to try and understand which thing we're working with and how we can create better interactions down the road. As far as what we're able to share about how we handle situations, so if we even have an incident on campus, if a student was rude to somebody else on campus and there's a consequence, we're not able to share. FERPA laws prevent us from sharing what consequences we've given a student. Because it protects it's a federal protection of their educational rights. So we are limited in how much we can share about things like that. But it is very important to us to have things, once we have things reported to us and we have accurate information, we hold those laws, those school policies and procedures very seriously. But of course we have to have accurate information. We can't just go off of what people think happened or how it's been reported on social media, different things like that. It has to be actual information. If that kind of helps you understand.
Yeah, and I know social media is huge.
It sure is.
In creating that public outcry.
Right.
And you know, and I know.
Kind of the best way to disseminate information, right?
Yeah, it was on the internet. It's got to be true, right? But you know, it's so often we see that people just take one side that they hear or that they know about, and they don't understand all the facts.
Yes.
And even, I mean, that process of trying to, you know, law enforcement, I feel for them in a lot of cases. School administration, you know, even they don't get all the correct information. And how long, it's not going to happen overnight.
No.
or in one little conversation with, you got to get both sides of the story. You got to understand, you know, all of the facts before you can even make any kind of, and in some cases, it's got to go to the court system before you can even do anything about stuff like that. Absolutely.
And we don't feel that it's, you know, working at my main emphasis is at the junior high. We have a lot of interesting behaviors at that age, and it's never a waste of our time to really invest in young people and help them understand the choices they've made, even if those choices disrupted some things. It's a good use of our time to help them rethink and consider other options and help them feel like they're in a safe place where they can change behavior and be a little more successful. And most young people, and I guess I don't want to breach into the adult world, but I find that most young people, when they realize what behaviors they've conveyed or how people are feeling, they do have a willingness to want to adjust and make it a safer place for everyone.
Right, and it's that trying to change somebody's behavior is very difficult. I know that's your main focus of your profession, and
well, helping them want to change their own behavior is,
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because if they don't have that desire to change, we're done, right?
Right.
And then, in fact, you know, I'm finding, because I get requested to go into the schools I have a little bullying program that I teach, and
is that when you're Mrs. Doubtfire?
No, I don't. But you know, maybe I should have Mrs. Doubtfire.
I haven't
maybe
pitched
they might.
Doubtfire. Sorry, I got it wrong.
That's okay. Because I didn't want to infringe on any copyright.
Of course not.
I'm close, but you know, maybe they might listen better if Miss Doubtfire went in there and taught that. I don't know, but
we need to do like a Jimmy Fallon where you pull up the little video screen. Hey, by the way, did you see this?
Right.
It caught my attention. I know.
But yeah, but it is interesting and it's fun, and you know, and I've learned even a lot about myself, and I relate stories of back when I was going to school, and you know, and I think people kind of tend to forget that, you know, people that don't say something, the person that's watching this happen, they're just as much of a bully if they don't intervene. Now, granted, we don't want them to step in the middle of a big fight and get beat up, but, you know, tell an adult, tell a teacher.
Right. A lot of times the person who is the victim, as we might call them in those situations, isn't going to have the courage to report what's going on. And so it is really helpful if people who are watching or are concerned about how even their friends might be treating other people. And that's a really common thing, is we'll have someone come up and say that their good friend is mistreating somebody. And it's difficult to stand up to your good friend if they're mistreating somebody.
It is. And, you know, it's, you know, looking back, I never thought myself as a bully, but after kind of talking about a lot of this stuff with the kids, and it's like, you know, I probably was, because I saw these kids getting picked on all the time, and I did nothing about it. You know, and I feel really bad. And so I use that story to hopefully encourage, you know, because we're seeing this bullying starting as low as 3rd, 4th grade.
Sure. Well, and it just continues. It's not something that stops. We don't age out of it. So then we see it in the workplace. We see it on the roads. We see it. It doesn't stop with school.
Right. In fact, once we get adults, I think in a lot of cases it's worse.
Yeah.
It really is, because now they have more access to other destructive means.
Yeah.
You know, and in fact, even when we're kind of talking about, you know, getting off of bullying a little bit, there's, the drugs, and I'm sure you're dealing with a lot of that kind of stuff in the school, and addiction rates, and not just drugs, but alcohol, all different kinds of things, and even addicted to our phones.
There is a lot of addiction. We're seeing in the mountain in general, addiction and deaths as due to overdose and suicide. Our Navajo County and Apache County, there's no other counties in the country that can compete with the number of people we lose to overdose and suicide deaths per capita. It's a crisis, and it's especially a crisis amongst our young people. In 4 years, we've lost 4 students in our district to either a suicide or overdose, and I know that most school districts in our community have similar numbers. So it's an epidemic, and it really does tie into the bullying, harassment, intimidation, hazing. People try to remedy their feelings of not belonging, and they turn to substance use or get into deep depression, and it's very concerning. September happens to be Suicide Prevention Month, and I plan to post every day in September about suicide prevention, links and helps and different ways that we can create safe spaces in our community where people feel that. And I know Doug saw a lot of that. The ER was really full of things like that.
Yeah, it's funny, we were just talking last night about, I remember coming into a day shift, and you're trying to get the night guy out of there, and it's always a surprise what you're going to see on the board, like the patients that you inherit when you get to your next on the day shift. And one morning I got there, and there were 8 patients that were there for behavioral issues, alcohol intoxication, suicide, ideations or attempts. And I just remember thinking, wow, this is a real issue. Just at our last board meeting, just this last Thursday, we talked about some of the current statistics. So the ER is being overcrowded because of all the COVID and other things going on right now. Very busy, but they said their July statistics, there were 33 transfers for behavioral health in the month of July. They had, on an average, 5 patients a day for behavioral issues, and of that, they needed 46 hours of sitter time. So somebody that's going to be there at the bedside to kind of watch the individual, make sure they're okay, or at least nearby. 46 hours on average for each day. And the 33 transfers. I mean, they're just big numbers.
And it's not just any one age, is it?
No.
It's all ages. In fact, even the elderly adults, and it's crazy what the age range is, and how many we're seeing.
Our community has a pattern of generational where contagion with mental health, and to what degree that's like genetic, or where we could look at, the way that person's personal chemicals are being produced that might contribute to that. But we also see behavioral contagion of, for instance, if you have someone in your close circle or a family member who has died by suicide, your rate is now 8 times more likely that you would die by suicide as well. And so when you figure that happens just a handful of times a few generations ago, and how that multiplies with each generation, we're really in crises. It's become an option that's very much considered because we have known individuals who have made that choice. And we really want to offer new options. And we do that when we help people feel like they matter and belong in our community as they are. And we create those places for them to feel that connectedness. COVID and quarantine, we have so many valid concerns about keeping people well. I get it. Unfortunately, that isolation really has contributed to some of the numbers I think the hospital is reporting. I believe someone from the hospital gave me an unofficial report, and this wasn't Doug. I was speaking with someone else who helps gather data in our community, and it was unofficial that it was about 8 times, at least in 1 month, they had about 8 times as many mental health ER people coming into the ER as they had the previous year. And that was
Right.
one of the months during quarantine. And I can't remember the specifics, but those are really significant numbers.
Yeah, I know I had the COVID back in January, and you know, sitting there, because I'm a fairly active person. I like to go to work. I love my job, and sitting there for 2 weeks in isolation and trying to not get the rest of the family sick, and it's darn near impossible to,
Right.
you know, but we did as best we could to separate. Luckily, I got the master bedroom that has the bathroom, and
They knocked and would leave you a
Right,
little
yeah.
plate at the door.
That's
Bring in
right.
a little mini fridge.
But yeah, you know, the first 5 days for me was miserable and worst I'd ever felt. But then, you know, it started clearing up, and now it's just
Yeah.
you know, and it's, you can only watch so much TV, and I couldn't get comfortable, and
It's a lonely time. And
Actu-
some people didn't get COVID at all, but chose to quarantine, you know, for that full year or year and a half. And we have young people and adults who really have lost their connection with people regarding that. One of the things we're doing at Blue Ridge to try, not just in response to all of the quarantining and alone time, this actually was the year before I started offering the mental health first aid courses, and we are offering those throughout the school year, and those are free to anyone in the community. And so,
Do you have a link on like a website or something where those dates and times are posted?
yes, I do.
So we'll get that shared across. We'll get.
Yeah, there's a flyer on my junior high page of the school website that would give you all of those dates.
Nice.
And we're also doing some trainings for young people. Allison Hepner's trying to help branch out what we're doing at Blue Ridge to other schools in the community. And the training is called Safe Spaces. And it's a peer training where we help young people understand. The main takeaway from the class is both classes, really, whether it's the mental health first aid or the safe spaces, is to really heighten our noticing skills of the people around us, to step away from our assumptions of why people are doing the things they're doing, instead of trying to figure out or assuming we know why they're doing those things, to step away from that and offer kindness and compassion and really build connections with them. When we seek understanding through people's lived experiences, then our judgment just really lifts, and we can listen to them without judgment, and we can offer them helpful resources that will really support them.
So you're giving them tools to be able to recognize and understand and maybe get that empathy going. And then now what's the next step? In fact, you talked about different helplines. What are some of those?
So the main one we talk about is the 24/7 call line through Lifeline, and that number is 800-273-8255. And we think of those hotlines as numbers people would call if they themselves were in crises. But what I like to work with young people and adults is to say, you might be helping someone in crises and not know what your next step is. Call that number and say, my friend is texting me right now and they're telling me these things that are concerning. And the experts on that 24/7 hotline, they're gonna guide you in what your next best step should be. The text line is 741-741. And then there's a special resource for the LGBTQIA+ community, and that's the Trevor Project. And that phone number, I'll make sure you guys can link that as well into the program. That's a good one as well, and that's something that that population is very marginalized, and at a much higher rate, they are at risk for suicide. Arizona has a hotline now. The number's 211. So you can call 211 and likely get some free services through the state of Arizona. And another one that I like to make sure people have is the domestic abuse hotline and the substance abuse hotlines. Those ones are all great. And it's important too to know about the Good Samaritan laws. So if you're with someone who has overdosed, and maybe you feel like they didn't try to overdose and you don't want to get them in trouble, there are Good Samaritan laws that allow you to call and get the authorities there, call the ambulance, say my friend needs help, and get them there. And because you're doing that in their best interests, there's not going to be legal repercussions. If you're doing it to save somebody's life, there are Good Samaritan laws that protect people in those instances. So whether it's accidental or intentional, if you're worried, well, either myself, I'm going to get in trouble, or the other people here are going to get in trouble, don't let that prevent you from calling and getting help.
In fact, even the Nexus Coalition for Drug Prevention is doing a lot of education and providing, tools and equipment and on, drugs and giving out Narcan and telling you how to train you how to use it properly. Because even dealing with, and I'm in that older population that I'm starting to forget things. But, it doesn't matter what age you are. You may be on some kind of painkiller or opioid for a tooth or whatever, and maybe you've forgotten you took too much, and it's easily to get into that overdose. And so there's a lot of different aspects of where that's very important. And I know their website, ncdp.rocks. Anybody, organization, group.
Yeah, they'll bring a group out. They came to our school. They'll bring their trainers out. They'll teach you about Narcan and how to administer it, and give you some dose, the actual kits to administer it. Yeah,
we're actually looking at, with my CPR classes, being able to provide that as part of the CPR class and get that out, so that, because it's not a bad thing.
And it's all linked. So when you think about suicide, or you think about overdose, accidental or intentional, these are all people searching for that feeling of belonging and mattering. And the way they're going about it is dangerous and reckless, and we want to give them better options. We want to keep people safe.
And I know we got just about 5 minutes left, and I wanted to kind of touch a little bit with, from the perspective of a doctor that's worked in ER, and I didn't know you worked in Detroit, and and that's one of those places you hear of some really bad things that happen there. But like you say, when you come here, there's a whole different variety of things that happen, farming incidents. But what in dealing specifically with drugs and alcohol and other possible, and you're seeing those people coming in with behavioral issues, suicidal thoughts, ideations. From your perspective, what is it that maybe we can help people to maybe avoid or even recognize some of this? What some of your thoughts on that?
I just absolutely love that Becky has so many resources and things. That was one of the things you mentioned. We recently were married, and one of the things I just really love about her is just that she is such a champion of the marginalized, the people that are struggling. Just really love that about her. I did see a lot of that. So in Detroit, a lot of drug issues. Heroin was a big deal back then. And then I came here and I thought, rural Arizona, it's not going to be anything like Detroit. And in reality, it's absolutely everything that Detroit was, and such a huge issue here locally in our county and in the area. We would see a lot of the effects of that in the ER, not just to the individuals, but to the families and the way that they're affected by things. I love that Becky has a lot of resources, and I love hearing her talk and tell about some of those. I know she has some comfort kits and things. It's just important to try to help them to feel a sense of belonging. They really do need to want to change, and we would see that in the ER. I felt sometimes really handicapped, and I'm sure the ER docs that are currently there could certainly attest to this. But you really want to help them. You know that they're suicidal. You know that they've made a gesture, and that they seem legit and serious about this, and yet there's just didn't seem like there was a lot of resources to try to help them. And I always felt a little bit handicapped working there, and I'm hoping that things have changed a little bit. I've been out of the ER for a few years now working at the wound care, but I do know that it was a big issue then, and I know there's some other resources that we have now as far as comfort kits and things like that.
Yeah.
In fact, with that, and in fact, I think in most cases, would you agree that they probably just need a real true friend? somebody that's genuine.
Yeah.
So this comfort kit we're talking about, you want
Yeah.
to take a couple of minutes and
So I brought one. I'm not going to take everything out of it. It's kind of something that can be, they're all a little bit different, but what we do is we build these. It's part of that Safe Spaces peer training that we do. And then we have other groups that have just built them on their own. Usually there's a blanket. Project Linus, which is a local group, they've made a bunch of blankets for our kits. We usually put a mandala coloring book, some markers. We put all of our resource hotline numbers. This one I think has a little stuffed animal, a little frog guy.
cool.
I know. And then
You're taking that one home, Doug?
Doug's curious. We got it like the mandala coloring book. A really great thing that's in each, when I do the training, that we teach the kids to really consider their words and how to be compassionate. And so they write a compassion letter. It's a very general letter that would be supportive and kind to anyone in any type of crises. And so that's in their kit as well. This one has some Play-Doh, this is a little notebook that has all those resource numbers. We were able to give a dozen or so of these to the hospital so they could give them to people that were at the hospital in crisis situations. We use them with young people in the school system. Anyone who's interested and wants to kind of build or create some of these kits, I would love to have them get in touch with me and can let them know how to do it.
And so we'll give them your number,
Absolutely.
email, all that information.
Yeah.
Email's great, right?
Email is fabulous.
But I know there's a whole lot of more things that we could take more time, but I appreciate both of you being able to come and visit with me on our show today. You got a lot of depth and knowledge and history.
Kindness, my message would be kindness really resolves so many of the things we've talked about today.
Right, and I totally agree with that. And it's just as easy to be kind as it is to lose your temper and
I don't know that it's as easy. It might be harder. So have the courage and find your super strengths and work a little harder and be kind.
Well, thank you, Becky and Doug, for coming on the show with me. And thank you for watching Safe and Sound, and we'll see you next month.